Diane Keever had driven past Sycamore Corner plenty of times without stopping. Everybody had. The half-acre plot between the old hardware building and the river walk sat behind a low iron fence, and if you came by at the right hour you would see a man on the bench inside, coffee thermos, work jacket, hands folded, just sitting there the way some people sit in church. Nobody knew why. Nobody had thought to ask. She had the condemnation notice in a manila folder on the passenger seat when she pulled in. Standard procedure, the deputy director had told her. The parcel had been identified for the Millhaven Greenway Initiative, a riverside trail, a pocket plaza, a modest grant from the state. The half-acre at Sycamore Corner would become a paved connector path. She was only there to post the notice. 30 minutes, 2 screws into the fence post, done. The gate was unlocked. She let herself in and stood for a moment in the entrance, longer than she expected. The garden was not what she'd imagined from the survey maps. Raised beds ran along the south fence in careful rows, late-season herbs, a line of ornamental grasses brown at the tips, 2 apple trees that looked 15 years old if they were a day. A flagstone path curved from the gate to the gazebo, each stone fitted tight, no mortar gaps, the kind of work that takes patience and knowledge. The gazebo itself was cedar, hand-cut, the joints pegged rather than nailed, a small brass weather vane at the peak. It was the work of someone who knew what they were doing and took their time doing it. The man on the bench looked up. He was younger than she'd expected, late 30s, maybe 40, in a canvas work jacket with the collar turned up against the November cold. His face was steady and quiet, the kind of face that doesn't change much when a stranger walks in. A thermos sat beside him on the bench slats. He nodded once, the way a man nods at someone walking through his backyard, and looked back at the river. "Morning," Diane said. "I'm with the Parks Department." "Diane Keever. I need to post a public notice on the fence." "I heard about the Greenway," he said. She waited. When he didn't say anything more, she crossed to the fence post near the gate and fitted the first screw. The notice went up straight. She fit the second screw, leveled it, stepped back. He had not moved. "Do you come here often?" she asked, and then felt the stiffness of the question. "Every morning," he said. "Before work." She looked at the gazebo again. At the brass weather vane catching thin winter light. At the flagstone path, the fitted joints. "You know who built this," she said. He picked up his thermos. "A guy," he said. He screwed the cap on and stood. He was about 6 feet, lean, the jacket worn at the elbows. He gave the garden one long look, the apple trees, the beds, the gazebo, the way a man looks at something he loves before he leaves it for the day. Then he walked out through the gate and was gone. Diane stood in the empty garden with the notice behind her on the fence and the river moving past the far rail, and she had the odd feeling of a woman who has walked into the middle of a sentence and missed the first half. She almost left it there. She would think about that later, how close she came to just filing the route log and moving on. But something about the morning, the fitted flagstones, the peg joints, the way he'd looked at those apple trees, made her pull the property file when she got back to the office. Not the current parcel record. The original deed file from 2017, the year the garden was registered with the city. It took her 20 minutes to find it in the physical archive, which told her everything about how carefully anyone had looked at it in the intervening 7 years. The file had never been digitized. It sat in a cardboard sleeve between a right-of-way easement and a stormwater drainage summary, misfiled by year, the sleeve a little soft from moisture at some point, the label handwritten in blue ballpoint, Sycamore Corner, deed of gift. The folder was thin. Inside was a deed of gift, notarized, 2 pages. A city engineer's site certification, signed and stamped. A letter of accompanying documentation. And the name of the donor at the top of the deed, in the plain type of a legal instrument. Warren J. Cole. She read the engineer's certification twice. The gazebo, the flagstone path, the raised garden beds, the drainage work along the south fence, all of it permitted, inspected, certified. Total estimated value of improvements at time of donation, $41,000. Construction by the donor himself, over 14 months, weekends and early mornings. The letter of documentation was 2 paragraphs. It did not explain why. It simply stated that the parcel was offered freely to the city for the use and benefit of the surrounding neighborhood in perpetuity, that the donor wished no recognition, and that the only condition was the one attached to the deed: green space, always. It was signed in the same even hand that had once, Diane now understood, pegged every joint in that cedar gazebo. She sat with the folder open for a long time, the fluorescent light buzzing overhead, the office noise carrying on around her as if nothing had happened. Then she looked up the public hearing date for the Sycamore Corner parcel. 3 days. The hearing room in the Millhaven Municipal Building held about 60 people when it was full. On a Thursday evening in November it held 32, which Diane counted from her seat at the side table. She was there as a departmental representative, her folder in front of her, the deed copy on top. Warren Cole came in at 6:07, a little late, with a girl at his side, 10 years old, maybe, dark braids, wearing a coat that had been hemmed up at the sleeves. He found 2 seats in the third row and sat without looking around the room. The girl took the chair beside him and leaned in close to say something. He answered into her hair. She sat back and folded her hands in her lap, watching the dais. Diane had not expected the girl. The deputy director ran the agenda. The Greenway Initiative was third on the docket. When it came up, the project coordinator walked through the parcel map, the trail alignment, the plaza design. The renderings looked clean and modern on the screen behind him. Several attendees nodded. One council member asked about drainage. The coordinator answered smoothly. Then the deputy director opened the floor for public comment. 2 neighbors spoke in favor of the path. A woman from the Millhaven Business Collective spoke about the economic activity the Greenway would generate. Warren Cole sat still through all of it, his hands on his knees. The girl beside him hadn't moved. Diane had not planned what she did next. She had only planned to be present, to answer departmental questions if they arose. But when the deputy director paused to check his list, she leaned forward. "I'd like to enter a document into the record," she said. The room turned to look at her. The deputy director blinked. "Diane. The deed of gift for the Sycamore Corner parcel," she said. "Filed with the city in October of 2017. I'd like it entered into the record and read aloud." A pause that lasted about 4 seconds, which in a hearing room is a long time. The deputy director took the folder. The council member on the end, a man named Ray Sutherland, who had been on the council since 2016, leaned forward slightly, and something moved across his face. The deputy director began to read. He read the donor's name. He read the legal description of the parcel and the improvements. He read the engineer's certified value. He read the condition of the gift, the parcel to remain in public use as a garden or green space in perpetuity, the condition binding on the city and its assigns. The room was very quiet by the time he finished. Ray Sutherland was looking at Warren Cole with the expression of a man reassembling something he'd let fall apart. "I signed that deed," he said, "not to the room, just to the fact of it. I was deputy director. I signed that." He looked at Warren. "That was you." Warren nodded once. "You built all of it yourself," Sutherland said. "Yes. That gazebo." 14 months, Warren said. "Weekends. Before my daughter was born." The room had the particular stillness of people recalculating something they thought they already understood. The project coordinator was looking at his parcel map. The woman from the business collective was very still in her chair. Diane was watching the girl. Rosie Cole had not moved during any of it. But now she raised her hand, not the way a witness raises a hand, the way a child in school raises a hand, straight up, patient, certain she'll be called on. The deputy director looked at her. "Yes. The gazebo is for my mom," Rosie said. Her voice was clear and unhurried in the quiet room. "Her name is June. She died when I was 3. My dad built the whole garden for her before I was born and he gave it to the town so everyone could use it. We go on Saturdays." She put her hand back in her lap. "I thought someone should know that." Nobody said anything for a moment. Warren's hand, under the table where only Diane could see from her angle, found Rosie's and held on. The deputy director looked at the deed. He looked at the council member. He looked at the project coordinator's parcel map on the screen, the clean paved connector path cutting straight through the flagstone work and the apple trees and the cedar gazebo. "The condition of the gift is binding," Sutherland said. He said it quietly, the way a man states a fact he should have checked 3 months ago. The city can't convey this parcel for development. It's not ours to give. The Greenway Initiative coordinator began making a note about alternative alignments. The condemnation died in that room, without a vote, without emotion, the way things die when the ground shifts under them. 6 weeks later, on a Saturday morning in January, the garden at Sycamore Corner was full for the first time Diane could remember. Millhaven's Parks Department had installed a small granite marker beside the gazebo's entrance, flush with the flagstone, the lettering clean and plain. The June Cole Memorial Garden. Built by Warren Cole, 2016 to 2017. Given to the town of Millhaven in her memory. Below it, in smaller type, endowed in perpetuity by the Millhaven Business Collective. Rosie Cole knelt in front of the marker and read it twice. Then she looked up at her father and said something Diane was too far away to hear. He crouched beside her, his hand on the back of her coat, and they stayed that way for a while, father and daughter reading her mother's name in stone, in a garden he had built with his own hands in the mornings before the world was awake, before Rosie existed, as an act of love so quiet that 7 years had passed before anyone thought to ask about it. Diane stood at the edge of the crowd with her coffee going cold and thought about the morning she had almost only posted the notice and left. 30 minutes, 2 screws, done. How easy it would have been. How many times the world erases something irreplaceable without ever knowing what it had. Ray Sutherland stopped beside her. He was looking at the gazebo, the peg joints in the cedar beams, the brass weather vane turning in a light river wind. "How'd you find the deed?" he said. "Something made me look," she said. He was quiet a moment. $41,000, he said. Out of his own pocket. 14 months of weekends. Never told a soul. "He told me a guy built it," Diane said. Sutherland shook his head slowly. 7 years we walked past that bench. Across the garden, Rosie had taken her father's hand and was walking him along the flagstone path toward the apple trees, pointing at something in the bare branches, explaining it to him with the solemn authority of a 10-year-old who has been coming to this place every Saturday for as long as she can remember and knows every corner of it by heart. Warren listened with his whole attention, the way he seemed to do everything, steady, unhurried, completely present. He looked where she pointed. He nodded. He said something back and she laughed, and the sound of it carried clearly across the winter garden. Diane watched them go. Some men announce themselves. Some men build something in the early morning, before the world is up, and give it away without a word, and then come back every day to sit with what they've made and what they've lost, steady and quiet, asking nothing, expecting nothing, their hands folded around a thermos on a cold bench, and it turns out that kind of man is exactly the kind you want to be paying attention to, and the kind the world most often fails to notice until someone finally thinks to open the file. Warren Cole had been sitting on that bench for 7 years. He would be sitting there still. Now the town knew why.